think I may have told this one before, but it bears repeating. You encounter many strange ideas in Florida. When we lived there, my daughter was in high school. She mentioned to one of her friends that her dad was a pastor. And that prompted the girl to ask, "Ooh, your dad's a pastor? Can he, cast spells on people?" Sadly, no. He does not have the secret occult power to give them warts or whatever. But of course, that is how many people do think of power in spiritual terms. The power to beat your enemy down or to manipulate the universe to get money or control or whatever it is you want. Such thinking is based on lust and on fear, not on faith and love. But when we think of power in general, we often do so along those same lines. Power is the ability to dominate. It is the ability to do things even when people try to prevent us from doing them. That's how we often think of it. So in sports, power means that I am able to hit your best fastball right out of the park. Or I break your tackle and get more yards than you want me to have. And in other areas of life, power may mean the ability to arrest people and put them in jail. In the Chicago neighborhood where I do my field work on Fridays, it is even starker. One boy's cousin was shot 10 times and died. Another boy recently watched as a family friend was killed in a drive-by shooting. Their power is very directly the ability to end life. Now, no doubt, there is need for the power of domination in the world. A little competition is a good thing. It can bring out strengths you didn't know you had, push you to another level. And in a fallen world, there are some folks who like to do things they should not do, and they must be stopped even by force if necessary. But when this is seen as the chief or only way to think of power, we get in trouble. Especially in church, competition and coercion just don't seem to be right. They don't seem to fit who we are. And this is why the church is often viewed by many people like a wimpy place, a powerless place, a weak place. So it is essential to broaden our sense of power, to understand it in new ways. Power, for example, may mean that we remain who we are even when we are pressured to become something else. That is real power. So, for example, recently a young man was baptized in this congregation, and as a result of that, he faced the mockery of the people he was living with. His power was the ability to claim the identity of a child of God, even in the face of their ridicule. That is strength. Or think of those Amish families a few years back whose children were murdered in school. The parents of those slain children visited the widow of the killer and attended his funeral and forgave him. That was their way of saying, you cannot force us to hate you. You do not have the power to force us to hate you. Yes, you have killed our children, but you are not strong enough to make us act and be something that we are not. And here in our first reading, we encounter an even more spectacular form of power, the ability to give life. We hear about it, interestingly, first in connection with this Dorcas. Now, I get this picture in my mind of who Dorcas is, And I can very easily imagine her saying, it's no big deal, you know. But there's something about her faith and character that deeply inspired the other people in her community. Not only that, she had the energy to do all kinds of small, necessary, and exactly right things that made everybody's life better, and they could show the mended garments to prove it. Now, I'm not going to name names here, but our congregation has not a few Dorcases in it. These are the people who impress us by the energy that they devote to enhancing the lives of other people in countless small ways that add up to a great deal. They seem to get energized by spending energy to be involved in helping folks. And the work that they do can be life-changing or even life-saving. A few years ago, I had a sad little funeral for a 16-day-old child. Born with severe birth defects, she just didn't make it. Her parents were not members of the church. They were not members of any church. Mom was struggling with drugs, and Dad was just an abusive piece of work. Well, some months later, to my surprise, Mom showed up here at church and was quickly surrounded by a group of people who just took to her and helped her turn her life around. By the time she was done with what she was doing with their support, you would not have recognized her as the same person whose baby I buried. It was almost a miracle. Now, circumstances took her to a different part of the country, but there can be no doubt that she will never forget the power that encompassed her here and the changes that it made in her life. Let's call that power, that life-giving power, by its right name. It is the power of love. And not that soft, sloppy set of goopy feelings, but an active will that places a high value on the life of the beloved and then acts consistently with that value until that value takes root in that life. Luther often loved to talk about love in this way. He would constantly remind us God does not love us because we're so lovely or pleasing to him or have something to offer. But such is the effect of God's love on us that he is able to make us lovely, to make us valuable, to make us innocent, to make us strong by loving us. By his will to give his life for his sheep, his love actually transforms who we are. And this in turn is the power we take from him to carry out into the world. We make a lot of mistakes about power in our world. Any 10-year-old with a Glock can take out a Navy SEAL. That's not really power, it's just senseless destructiveness. The power that we cultivate here is the ability to create something that was not there before. To bring out some good in a person or a situation that was latent and might never have seen the light of day had somebody not irrigated all that with generous amounts of hard-working, long-suffering, patient love until the good came out. Now, strictly speaking, this is not our power at all. It is God's power at work in and through us, and what a privilege that is, to be an instrument of God's peace. We don't create this power, it creates us. We don't control this power, it controls us. We do not decide what we're going to do with it. We try simply to respond, to align ourselves with the will of the God who wants to work through us. Nor is this a very scarce kind of power that we have to hoard like nuclear weapons. The power is as limitless as God himself. All of us can have as much of it as we want. We do not use this power to defend ourselves by taking others down and making them weaker. Our good shepherd protects us and then sends us out in dangers and risks. We do not use this power to dominate other people. We use this power to make them stronger and healthier and more alive. Our first reading shows Peter actually giving life to a woman who was dead. Now, I've never known a living person who could do that, but Peter would be the first to tell you he didn't do it. If someone had said, "Hey, Peter, do that again," Peter would look at him like he had two heads. You know, what are you saying? There's no guarantee that anything like raising a dead woman will ever happen again. But there's nothing saying it can't. The real point is that life-giving power works through us. Whether it does, how it does, how much it does, depends on how responsive we are to the God who loves us. Do we let God love us? Welcome this love eagerly, or do we ignore him and fend him off? Do we focus on him, let him capture our imagination, or do we let ourselves get distracted? Do we insist on our own way, or do we make ourselves radically available to him? I don't believe the age of miracles is completely over. I've seen a number of minor but important miracles. I've given them and I've received them. And so have many of you. You can think of times. And so can we all, if we simply let God love us as thoroughly as he wants to, and then let it flow through us to where it's needed.